Long ago, in the twilight of King Aerys' reign, the realm was drawn into the death throes of rebellion. It was in these final days that Prince Rhaegar Targaryen rode into history at the head of a royal host determined to quench the fires of revolt. At King's Landing, even as Tywin Lannister's banners besieged the city, another battle unfolded to the north, the Battle of the Trident. In the bloody field beside the Tully's River, Robert Baratheon stood with hammer in hand across from Prince Rhaegar. The sun was high and hot on that summer's day as the two armies clashed. Rhaegar wore gleaming armor of bronze and crimson, his silver hair flowing like the mane of a crowned stag as he rallied his men. Flames and sweat mingled in his eyes as he guided his heavy cavalry through the frantic clash. He heard the cries of his men and the thunder of horses, but he focused only on one target. Lord Stark's family was safe, and so he could not fail. Robert's cry echoed through the spray of the Trident. He swung his warhammer with the fury of a cornered beast. Rhaegar weaved beneath the blow and raked his sword across Baratheon's arm. Steel sang as Rhaegar's blade glanced off Robert's golden breastplate. Baratheon roared in pain and retaliation, striking at Rhaegar's helm. The iron ring shattered in Rhaegar's hand, and splinters of steel flew. The prince's helmet was dented, and blood ran in his hair. But he would not stumble. He held off a second strike with his shield and let his own sword dance. Lightning split the sky. Rhaegar surged forward. The morning sun glinted on his steel as he drove the pommel of his sword into Robert's ruined shield. The wooden shield exploded like dry wood. Robert staggered. The rebel king roared and raised his arm to strike again, but Rhaegar's dragon steel blade flashed in answer. In a heartbeat, the blade was through Robert's armor and into his heart. The prince pulled back his sword, dripping black blood, as the rebel king sagged to his knees. Robert Baratheon looked up at Rhaegar with eyes dulling. He gripped Rhaegar's arm and gasped, "Take care of Lyanna." He coughed, then fell face first into the mud. Rhaegar knelt with one knee in the riverbed as the noise of battle faded. He lifted Robert gently and bound his wound with cloth. The young king whispered, "Lyanna," and died. Then Rhaegar pressed a hand to the fallen king's head and whispered a prayer to the gods that Lyanna would never know of Robert's end. He whispered something only the wildflowers of the Trident field could hear, a promise that he would always protect her, and the son she had yet to name. He wiped the sweat and mud from his brow and rose. He looked at the carnage around him, friends and foes alike, fallen in a great sea of destruction. Horses nicked in the rivers, banners splattered with blood. The smoke and stench of death was thick in the air. Roizi's core, Rhaegar felt every life he had taken weigh on him. He closed his eyes and gave thanks for his success, but he could not yet celebrate. The war was not yet done. Chapter 1. The Battle of the Trident. Rhaegar surveyed the field. He had won the great battle, but already his mind raced toward King's Landing. The Trident's bloodstain on the world would never truly wash away, but he would not waver. "So the dragon flies anew," Ser Barristan whispered as he clasped Rhaegar's shoulder. Rhaegar could only nod, allowing himself a moment of exhaustion. The pale sun was inching toward dusk. He gathered his Kingsguard around him. They bore the wounds of the fight, but stood tall for their prince. "Return north," Rhaegar ordered. "Tend to the wounded and guard the realm." His war horses were being led up to him. Rhaegar mounted Nafris, the black destrier Blackguard had lent him for battle. As he set off, the great host followed. They moved in solemn silence back toward the Rose Road. Despite his grievous wound, Robert Baratheon's body was lifted onto a litter. He would be granted a warrior's burial. Rhaegar would grant House Baratheon that mercy on the terms of honorable surrender. The lords of the Riverlands took the dust-covered litters and banners and organized the troops. Song of old heroes on the wind and the sound of horses moving homeward filled the valley. Maybe there was no cheering now, only the iron resolve that comes from knowing what was at stake. The Dragon Prince had delivered the last blow on rebellion, but as he felt the hammers of the old wars beating in his chest, he knew the realm would soon tremble under his new crown. Chapter 2. The Return to King's Landing. Not a week passed before Rhaegar's war horses thundered down the Rose Road toward King's Landing. The Dragon Prince returned not as the frightened boy of the year before. all but as a commander with victory in his eyes. The hush of winter snow faded into the green of spring as armies marched south. Villages lined the roads, folk kneeling or bowing as the golden dragon banner passed. Rumors had already reached them. The Dragon Prince had bested Robert Baratheon, and rebellion lay smothered like a flame in the night. He returned for one purpose: to claim what was stolen. The familiar towers of the Red Keep rose ahead, once again familiar but foreboding. Rhaegar felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on him as he entered his ancestral home. The stone corridors still smelled of smoke and fear. He took a deep breath and strode toward the throne room with steady purpose. At the gates, Tywin Lannister awaited alone. He knelt as Rhaegar passed. The golden lion of Casterly Rock remained on his breast, but his eyes were hollow. Tywin spoke softly. "My prince, the city is yours if you will it." Rhaegar dismounted. For a moment, the two men stood in silence. It's understanding. Rhaegar placed a gentle hand on Tywin's arm and said, "The Iron Throne shall be forged by mercy." The lords and knights of King's Landing filed in to witness history. Rhaegar entered the throne room without fanfare. King Aerys Targaryen was seated on the Iron Throne amid black ashes from the defeated pyromancers. The Mad King's burning stare met Rhaegar's tranquil eyes. For a heartbeat, it seemed Aerys might flare with madness again. But Rhaegar's presence quelled it. But he drew long and spoke once, loud and clear. "I am Rhaegar Targaryen, son of Aerys. The realm stands behind the dragon now." There was no uproar. Lords simply bowed or lowered their heads. Tywin Lannister said quietly, "Long live the king," and knelt. Rhaegar took the Iron Throne. The famed metal bit into his palms, marking him at once with guilt and destiny. The room was silent except for the distant drip of melting wax. Aerys rose in his seat, his eyes wild, but did not contest. Old Rhaegar kneeled, put the crown on Aerys' head, and held him in the hollow of his arm as he drew his sword. Aerys had fought bravely under that crown. Now the madness could be ended. Rhaegar took the sword's blade and leveled it at his father. "We will not be enslaved by terror any longer," Rhaegar said softly. With one strike, Aerys Targaryen was no more. The old dragon's final roar echoed but once, then faded. Seize of power was complete. The city's banners fell. Itswan in the coming days the armies relaxed their battle lines. Houses Tyrell and Martell moved into position to fill the defensive posts Aerys had abandoned. Rhaegar issued decrees by torchlight. No more bloodshed in the streets of the capital. The Lannisters would hold their castles, and no daughter of House Stark, Lannister, or Baratheon would be harmed. Even King's Landing breathed easier. That night, Rhaegar ascended to the Red Keep's highest tower under a calm, watchful moon. No triumph feast was held. It would come on another day. Instead, he gazed out over the city he had saved. Under the quiet fires of twilight, he charted the era to come. Chapter 3. A King's Peace. With Aerys gone, a stunned silence settled over the Seven Kingdoms. Rhaegar Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, with the bitter taste of betrayal on his tongue, now wore the crown that night. In the great hall of the Red Keep, nobles from every corner of the realm knelt as Rhaegar quietly ascended the Iron Throne. A mighty hush fell. Lord Eddard Stark knelt last of them all. Rhaegar recognized in the wolf's eyes a mixture of relief and anguish. Lyanna Stark had not been found. Ned's face held a secret fear. Rhaegar's hand fell on Ned's shoulder in brotherly comfort. "Your sister is alive, Lord Stark," he whispered. "Her child will bear the name of Targaryen. And no wolf or lion shall dare stand against him." Ned released a breath he had not known he held. Queen Elia Martell had been brought to the Red Keep by the Kingsguard. Dornish and Targaryen blood intermingled in her gentle features. Beside her clung his daughter Rhaenys, golden-haired and trembling, and his baby son, Aegon, warm in her arms. Rhaegar gazed at them, anguish and love struggling in his eyes. He would not desert the mother of his children. With solemn words, he proclaimed a lasting peace with Dorne. "Elia," he said, "your house shall keep its honor. Your children will be safe in my care. I will protect them as I protect all I hold dear." No one doubted his promise. Even Prince Viserys, though jealous, knelt reverently. Rhaegar's voice echoed in the hall. "Let it be known to all that from this day on, the Seven Kingdoms are one." These first days of the new Targaryen reign were a fragile peace. Lords drank quietly in the Sunfire portico, and knights marched home from war. Rhaegar strode from the Red Keep's high tower into the night, staring out at the horizon with sorrow. He was king, but he had begun to learn that a crown could both uplift and crush. Chapter 4 Of Blood and Dragons. Rhaegar's ears had not heard his sister's name spoken since he was a boy. Daenerys Targaryen was half a world away in the lands of the sunrise, but news of a dragon queen reached even his ears. Messengers from Pentos and Tyrosh whispered that a Targaryen girl had won herself a Khalasar, even dragons. The prince's heart surged with hope and dread. At the first opportunity, he summoned the Red Wine fleet and crossed the Shivering Sea on a single mission: to find his sister or die searching. Rhaegar watched his ship's sails on the narrow sea with equal parts excitement and trepidation. He thumbed at the Valyrian steel crown still in his bags, and thinking of how he once wore a younger brother's hope for Lyanna. The only thing that steadied him was the promise to protect the name of Targaryen and Stark alike. It was the full moon's wan light when the longship set anchor off the Red Waste's coast. Guides brought Rhaegar at dawn to the Dothraki Khalasar where Daenerys dwelled. He looked for her among the horse lords, but it was Viserys who approached first. The fragile blonde boy, now taller and gaunt, unrecognized the prince and stepped aside, eyes wide in awe. Then Daenerys appeared. She was pale as moonlight and slight of frame, but Rhaegar saw the fire in her eyes was brighter than his own. As she walked forward, 3 great wings shadowed the rising sun. There, atop a carved wooden dais, perched the hatchlings of Drogon, one black gold, one silver purple, one gold and red. The dragon stirred and roared as Daenerys came to kneel before her brother. "Rhaegar," she said, smiling like dawn. "All my life I've waited for you." He bowed his head and pressed a kiss to her forehead, overcome with emotion. In that moment, the last shreds of dread fell away. "My sister," he whispered. He lifted the dragon-horned crown he still wore, offering it to her, but she shook her head, laughing through tears. Behind Daenerys stood Khal Drogo, the mighty Khal who had sworn to protect her. The great Dothraki raised his arms briefly in respect, acknowledging the blood of Targaryens and Khals alike. Yes, the chill of reunion melted. Rhaegar introduced himself properly to the Khalasar. Viserys only glared with envy, but Rhaegar would not be moved by the boy's spite. "Viserys," he said firmly, "your anger is unworthy of our name. Let it die with the night." Drogo saw understanding in Rhaegar's tone. The Khal clasped Rhaegar's forearm in a warrior's gesture. "Our roads part here," Rhaegar said, understanding Drogo's meaning. The Khal nodded and presented Rhaegar with a braided armband of gold and a gift of honor. In the morning, they would be gone beyond the horizon of grass, but at that moment, there was only family reunited. Rhaegar spent that evening among the Dothraki tents. Daenerys served them wine spiced with pomegranate. They spoke softly of dragons and destiny. Viserys, silent, watched as his siblings bonded. Rhaegar pulled out a Valyrian steel dagger and sketched a dragonfly sigil in the sand by firelight, explaining it was Lyanna's personal symbol. Daenerys giggled and drew a sun. Drogo, curious, came to gaze. Rhaegar promised, "We will ride them together into the future." That night, Rhaegar and Daenerys shared Rhaegar's tent. Drogo led his Khalasar off across the grass, disappearing as promised. Rhaegar and Daenerys knelt with Viserys between them and lit frankincense for the old gods and the Dosh Khaleen. "The dragon has 3 heads," Daenerys murmured softly as they swore. Rhaegar nodded at the ancient saying. "Ah, together we will ride into the future," he whispered to his sister. Thus the dragon siblings set sail west. Behind them, the Khalasar of Drogo vanished into the endless horizon of grass. Chapter 5 The Dragon's Host. Word of Rhaegar's return across the narrow sea spread like wildfire through the 7 kingdoms. In King's Landing, courtiers whispered of a king with dragons at his side, of how crowned heads of Essos had bowed to Prince Rhaegar's steel. The realm stood caught between awe and trembling. In the great war room of the Red Keep, King Rhaegar gathered his council. The air was thick with the fear of winter, yet the halls still echoed with distant laughter of victory. Rhaegar would need ships to bring his sister home, and he would need to trust his allies to defend all that they had saved. Lord Eddard Stark stood by his side as Hand of the King. Rhaegar's words to him were blunt. "My sister has dragons, my friend. Oh, we must gather ours." Nodding grimly, Ned promised to call the banners of the North and bring the Stark warriors to the capital should the cold winds require their strength. Even Storm's End and Highgarden pledged ships and knights to the king. From the Reach came word that High Lord Mace Tyrell marshaled his banners and filled Lannister galleys with loyal Tyrell men. The greatest houses of the realm pledged their aid. Ships arrived from Old Town, Bitterbridge, Dragonstone, and beyond. But Tywin Lannister and Mace Tyrell knelt to the crown once more, trading independence for warships. In council, Tywin Lannister and Mace Tyrell knelt together, war-weary but convinced. "We serve because you serve the realm," Tywin murmured, lifting an anchor aboard Casterly Rock's flagship. Mace Tyrell bowed deeply and declared, "The Queen's needs are the kingdom's needs." Rhaegar's grin was rare but fierce. At last, the Seven Kingdoms had rallied behind the dragon. A magnificent fleet was assembled. In Dragonstone's harbor, Rhaegar beheld the fleet. Galleys with dragon-head prows lined the water. Banners of every house fluttered, roses and wolves, lions and stags, krakens now painted red and gold. The sea wind carried the promise of unity as longships from the Iron Islands joined the Armada under Rhaegar's colors. Rhaegar set out to command the fleet himself. Sitting on a raised stern seat, he wore his crown beneath a woolen scarf. As each lord swore fealty again on the deck, Rhaegar vowed to repay their loyalty. Many wept as he kissed their sigils, feeling the burden and honor of the crown as never before. 1,000 dragonflies of banners snapped to attention across the sea. By the time winter's frost had caught the dragon anchors of iron, Rhaegar had assembled a formidable armada. Chapter 6. Of Wolf and Dragon. By winter's first frost, the last of the invitees had arrived at King's Landing to meet the Queen's sister. Lord Eddard Stark stood with his kin before Rhaegar on the steps of the Red Keep. At his side walked Lady Lyanna, pale but resolute, with a babe swaddled in her arms. The throne room was hushed as the North was presented to the king. Rhaegar's gaze settled on the child first. The baby was small, inked with wisps of silvery blonde hair and eyes of molten gold shining with curiosity. He was silent as he watched the baby's hand grasp his tunic. "Who is this proud little wolf?" Rhaegar asked softly. "This is Aegon," Lyanna replied, with tears of relief in her eyes. "Aegon of House Targaryen, son of Rhaegar's blood and the last of Winterfell's line." The infant knew neither name nor title yet. Rhaegar knelt and took the boy gently into his arms. Yet the baby wriggled and giggled as if recognizing the strange fire in the man's embrace. The prince held the boy close, feeling a warmth beyond any hearth fire. "Aegon," he said, making the little prince smile, "you shall be heir to the Iron Throne, with the wolf's courage and the dragon's heart." He wrapped the child in the cloak of a dragon. Lyanna smiled, and Ned Stark gave a silent nod of gratitude. Later, in a quiet chamber, "Ismus, you honored me beyond all words," "You honored me beyond all words," he whispered as he took her hand. Lyanna reached to cradle her son. "Aegon will grow knowing his family," Rhaegar vowed. He gently kissed Lyanna's forehead, and for a moment, the king was just a brother to his sister once more. During those days, and Ned Stark became Rhaegar's greatest counsel on the loyalty of the North. Lord Stark spoke of winter's perils and how a false Targaryen would have been the North's enemy. Rhaegar took these words to heart, knowing that the wolf and the dragon must stand together. Queen Aelia Martell watched these scenes with unspoken grace from the sidelines. She had no child of her own when her husband fell in battle, but she embraced Aegon with the tenderness of a mother. She stood quietly at Lyanna's side, proud that the boy had two mothers to love him. Rhaegar walked the courtyards of the Red Keep in the cool of evening, granting pardons and holding audience. He listened to old grievances and assured even former prisoners that the new king would be merciful. By candlelight, he commissioned new gold coins bearing his visage. In a quiet moment, he and Ser Barristan Selmy watched the smoke of dragonfire monument across Blackwater Rush. The old knight said, "My prince," and the dragon still flies in winter. Rhaegar only nodded. He had Aegon's cradle placed in the Great Hall so the realm could see the heir. The palace buzzed with a cautious hope. If the dragon bore a son instead of endless war, perhaps peace was not just a dream. Rhaegar watched from his throne, a mixture of joy and resolve on his face. He had lost much, but in the strength of his sister and their son, he saw the promise of tomorrow. Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. Winter came at last, born with it the uneasy feeling that greater darkness accompanied the cold. Rhaegar stood atop the battlements of Winterfell, one starless night, wrapped in furs. Below him, Winterfell's torches blinked like a field of stars. The banners of the Starks and the Aerys flapped in the wind. He felt it in his bones, an ancient dread, older than the long night itself, howling at the horizon. By dawn, he summoned Lord Stark and Lord Martell to the war chamber. And Rhaegar crossed the stone floor silently as heavy doors closed. Maester Sorin unfurled an aged scroll in the trembling candlelight, describing the return of the others. 7 centuries have passed since the last endless night, the maester croaked. Now, an omen repeats itself. Rhaegar listened as Sorin told of dragons turned to ice and armies of shadows rising. His heart pounded, but his voice held steady. Ned Stark gripped the carved wooden armrest of his chair. "Oh, we must guard the wall with our lives," he said, pale eyes steady. "When I took my vow, I swore to protect the realm. The time of monsters has come again." A solemn silence fell. Rhaegar met his old friend's gaze and nodded. "We ride to meet this storm," he promised. "The wall will not fall while Targaryen blood runs through these lands." Each day Rhaegar rode with Lord Stark and Lord Martell to observe the men training, ensuring every archer and spearman was ready. Thus he oversaw the forging of dragonglass weapons. Under his gaze, smiths at Dragonstone hammered at fiery forges by day and night. Great shards of obsidian were freed from the mines of Dragonstone. By torchlight, he watched men shape each glistening spearhead and arrowhead. When finally the cool shafts emerged, he had countless weapons to banish the dead. King Rhaegar also sent ravens to the Night's Watch. He pledged a dragonrider and an army to Castle Black's aid. He turned to Lyanna. "Take Aegon to Winterfell," he told Ned. "He is our true heir. He must be kept safe." Lord Stark nodded, grasping the boy tightly as Rhaegar tasked him with safeguarding the realm behind the wall. Lord Oberyn of Dorne arrived bearing a burning brand from the Dothraki priests. With a snake's smile, he said it was a sign from the gods. The old tales of fire and ice had come true. "I will honor my oath," Oberyn declared. "Yaspok give me steel, and I shall pray by spilling the other's blood." Rhaegar welcomed the Dornish blood, knowing unity of all people was their only hope. Before they marched, Rhaegar knelt one last time in Winterfell's Godswood. The old weirwood scarlet leaves rustled overhead as though whispering a blessing. He kissed the dragonsteel amulet at his breast and touched the carved face of the gods. "I must succeed, old one," he said softly. The winter wind howled in answer. Rhaegar spent long hours in the crypts of Winterfell, reflecting by the statues of fallen Starks. There he saw a vision of the heart tree and whispered, "I will not fail you, blood of Winterfell." The old heroes seemed to grant him solemn resolve. That first morning beyond the wall, Rhaegar called for Aegon to ride with him. The boy, now 5 and already fierce, beamed as he mounted the young dragon. Daenerys smiled through tears. And the child in the dragon's fight was a symbol of the future they now fought for. In the morning mist, the unified host rode north. Northern pikemen and Dornish spearmen, Reach Knights and Stormlanders, Dothraki Kalasi and Westerland's archers. A dragon's host never before seen in the 7 kingdoms. Rhaegar rode at the head on his great black warhorse Nafrys, with his sister Daenerys on Zara, her black and silver dragon. Dragons and men together, poised against the encroaching darkness. Each mile they rode, the frost deepened and the wind grew keener. Even the horses shivered beneath their cloaks, uneasy. Wolves of Winterfell padded at the edges of the column, howling softly at the pale sky. The wall loomed ahead, a great white scar against gray clouds, silent watchers guarding its gate. At last, the host reached Eastwatch by the sea, and from there, Rhaegar led the army beyond the wall's gate. The black towers rose grim in the frozen fog. Wan northern crows knelt on his shoulders to guide him, and even the white cloaks of the Night's Watch were awed by the dragons perched on the high ice. "The wolf and the dragon watch together now," he whispered. He marched north through the haunted forests, where birch and pine stood twisted by the cold. The hush was broken only by the crunch of snow under his steed's hooves. A lone raven took flight above the column, as if to warn them further. The sky darkened. Though the sun sat low above the wall, shimmering shapes began to emerge from the snow. Pale riders on skeletal horses, slicing through icy mist. Behind them advanced a tide of whites, endless as a storm wave, untouched by sun or fire. Rhaegar felt their cold hunger for the living. He raised his dragon's fang sword, cast in the shape of a dragon's fang. "For the realm!" he cried. Rhaegar spurred Nafris forward as Drogon and Daenerys' silver dragon circled above, breath trembling with flame. His voice echoed, "Rhaegar! Rhaegar!" as one man. Chapter 8. Nightfall. Beneath an iron sky, the armies clashed with the endless night. Rhaegar rode Drogon, great black wings cutting the cold air, while Daenerys rode her silver-winged beast. Below them, the host lit the darkness with dragonfire and flaming arrows. Shadows like living sails closed in from all sides. Rhaegar felt Drogon's scales tremble under him as the first white lunged. His mouth was dry, his heart pounding. Yet he held the reins with unwavering resolve. Even before fire or sword could strike, Rhaegar whispered a prayer to the old gods and Valyria. "Light, burn away the darkness." A burst of blue-white fire tore the sky and hit a horde of whites, melting them into steaming ash. Dragonfire met ice as the two dragons roared. The others led the vanguard, for Rhaegar's sword, tempered in dragonfire and forged with dragonglass, sang as it bit through the undead. Each swing sent shards of ice flying. Then he fell to one knee, parrying blows in the swirling chaos. The night stretched to its end with each breath. When the ice dragon screamed and fell, Rhaegar plunged into the fray on foot. The undead waves surged around him like icy surf. He saw Lord Mormont down another with Valyrian steel, and shield maidens of Manderley cleave through whites with flaming spears. Nothing could stop the tide now. Man and dragon together were an unstoppable storm. Through the fray, and Rhaegar spotted his greatest foe, the Night King himself, clad in armor of swirling ice, riding a black dragon that crackled with frost. The two kings regarded each other across the battlefield. On Drogon and the ice dragon, they leapt into the sky. Rhaegar felt the pull of destiny in that moment. He and the Dark Rider were two halves of a prophecy. Drogon lunged. Rhaegar raised his blade. His dragon's fang met the frozen scales of the opposing dragon in a shatter of light. With a final roar, Rhaegar plunged downward, spear of obsidian in hand, eyes blazing red. The Night King turned. "No place for men here," the Pale King hissed. He swung his frost-forged blade at Rhaegar's chest. Rhaegar blocked it with his dragon's fang. Time slowed as the champions traded strikes, steel against ice. Then Rhaegar, muscle screaming, drove his sword through the Night King's chest. With a jagged crack across the king's icy armor, the creature screamed, sound shattering like glass. One Rhaegar's arms shook as the darkness unraveled. In that instant, the tide of whites faltered. Each undead soldier froze and shattered like brittle snow. A wind of fire and cold swept the battlefield clean. As the sun broke the horizon, Rhaegar walked through the field of steam and falling ash. Drogon circled overhead, roaring triumph to the clearing sky. Knights and warriors of every house knelt in reverence. Rhaegar slowly stood. Rhaegar raised his dragon's fang to the sky. All around him, soldiers stared in awe, then shouted in fierce victory. Rhaegar raised his dragon's fang to the sky. "The dawn is ours," he proclaimed, voice echoing on the walls of the world. Lord Stark, bow in hand, found Rhaegar beside the fallen Night King's sword. Ned placed a heavy hand on the king's shoulder and whispered, "The realm will remember this day. That my king." Rhaegar sheathed his blade and looked down at the ancient pike at their feet. Dawn burned in crimson and gold. Queen Daenerys knelt at his side, tears in her eyes. "It is finished," she said softly. Rhaegar took the Night King's weapon from the ground. "This blade belongs in memory, not in war," he murmured, and together they walked away from the fields of winter. Chapter 9. The King's Council. The dawn after victory was cold but bright. In King Rhaegar convened a council beneath Winterfell's high roof. The smoke of last night's revelry still rose in distant kitchens as lords from every corner of the realm gathered. Rhaegar stood at the head of the long table, Queen Daenerys beside him, and Lady Lyanna, now Lady of Winterfell, with young Aegon in her arms. Rhaegar Rhaegar opened the council in a clear voice. "We fought the darkness with fire and steel," he said. "But now we must bind the realm with justice and honor." Each lord took his turn to speak. Lord Tywin Lannister, hat in hand, promised that Casterly Rock would serve the king alone. Mace Tyrell pledged the Reach's loyalty and spoke of a future union between their houses. Oberyn Martell demanded the rightful independence of Dorne, and Rhaegar granted it with grace. When the talk turned to the people, Ned Stark suggested relief for the common folk. Rhaegar stood. "As he's no taxes shall be collected for a year," he declared. "Let our people rebuild after this war." Gasps ran through the hall. The small folk outside would call it a miracle. Council adjourned with a new map of alliances formed. Rhaegar traveled to greet each arriving bannerman himself. He clasped arms with farmers as well as nobles. At Dragonstone's forge, he blessed dwarven smiths for their service. In the crypts of Winterfell, he prayed by the old statues of Stark kings, yet taking strength from their stone faces. That evening, King and Queen held a grand feast for all present. Tables sagged under roast boars, wild fowl, and Dornish spices. Rhaegar and Daenerys sat at the high table, their child between them on a high chair carved with dragons and wolves. Above them fluttered banners embroidered with both dragons and dire wolves. Lyanna fed Aegon wine from a goblet, and the boy sputtered it out to roars of laughter. Or Ned Stark raised a cup. "To the dragon and the wolf," he cried. "May their banners ever fly together." Every man and woman in the hall cheered and drank. Even distant Storm's End and Highgarden raised glasses to the king. As flames burned low in the hearth, Rhaegar stood again. His voice was steady. "This dawn is ours," he said. "We proved courage and unity can remake the world. The long night is over, and now I pledge to bring spring." Torches blazed as one people rejoiced in new peace. Chapter 10. A Dragon's Promise. Winter gave way to spring as the realm healed. Rhaegar oversaw the rebuilding of every broken wall. He declared that Winterfell's gates be shaped like dragon's teeth, warding off any returning dark. In King's Landing, the Citadel's masters were ordered to record the true history of this war. Rhaegar renamed the Order of the King's Guard the Queen's Banner, giving Daenerys 2 knights, and himself 2, to guard her dragons and Aegon. He made Sir Arthur Dayne Lord Commander, trusting the Sword of the Morning's honor above all. Lyanna returned to Winterfell as Lady Regent for Aegon. Her council included Ned Stark as her hand. A dragon gate was carved in the northern gatehouse to welcome visitors from the south. Rhaegar often wrote to his sister, sending supplies for Winterfell's larder and asking for reports on their people's hopes. He kept a piece of direwolf pelt on his breastplate and told Ned it reminded him of the Starks, now blood-twined with the Targaryens. Rhaegar's first months were busy. He heard petitions, merchants asked to reopen trade, farmers for seed. He decreed that no tariffs would be charged for a year, so relief could flow freely. He gave gold to mend bridges in the Riverlands. Meisters opened old trade records to chart routes safe from cold. Even the Iron Bank of Braavos sent loaners to help Goldtooth House replant vineyards. Daenerys toured the Red Keep's dungeons with Rhaegar. They freed surviving prisoners of Aerys' cruelty and let them walk free. The Maesters Guild was invited into the gardens to cultivate healing herbs. Rhaegar even restored the faith militant in name, knowing the common folk loved ritual. He vowed that no small folk would suffer the faithless horrors of the past. Messengers rode far and wide. Aegon's name was spoken with hope. Song and story were born again. Bards sang of the dragon who lived, of the day of dragons and wolves. Children learned that bravery and mercy had saved their world. Yet Rhaegar never forgot the price of victory. The wall was reforged with ice-glass towers. He sent lords to patrol beyond it, and knighted noble-born survivors of the Castle Black Watch. Whenever a shadow of white was seen, Rhaegar led a hunt to bring it down. The people whispered that their king fought the night man to man, a hero in red and white. Seasons turned and blossoms returned. The Reach's roses bloomed under sunlit skies. The rivers of Dorne filled once more from melted snows. Under Rhaegar's rule, grain and wine flowed again, and laughter filled taverns that had known only tears. When the next winter came, it came softly, just another season. At dawn, Rhaegar and Daenerys stood atop Winterfell's walls, mate little Aegon between them on Drogon's back. The first rays of sun glinted off the snow, scattering diamonds on the ice. Aegon pointed at the bright morning and in his small voice said, "Only warm days ahead." Rhaegar lifted his son high. "The long night is over," he said quietly. Daenerys kissed his cheek. As their dragons circled the rising sun, father and mother watched the kingdom they had saved, and in that new light, the kingdom dreamed of summer.